This is the story of a teenage boy in Polk County, Florida, who has now tragically lost both of his parents to separate violent incidents. His father, Charles Griffith, was shot and killed in his own home on Valentine's Day in 2023. The boy's mother, 39-year-old Catherine Griffith, was fatally stabbed in the neck on September 8, 2024. The crazy thing is, both deaths came in the aftermath of alleged arguments with the same person, their own son, Colin. The boy's story to police on that Sunday evening in September 2024 sounds similar to one he's told before. After his father's death back in Oklahoma, he called 911, claiming self-defense. There were no witnesses, and the state of Oklahoma couldn't disprove his story. Charges against Griffith were dropped, and his claim of self-defense was substantiated.
Collin Griffith.
Because he was a minor at the time, Griffith was sent to live with his mother in Southwest Florida.
You're driving this better than you drive your own car.
But from the start, their relationship appeared dysfunctional. Multiple 911 calls were made to the Polk County Sheriff's Office. Sometimes it was Colin who called, sometimes it was Catherine.
Hello. Who's who? I'm Deputy Jankowski.
On November 13th, 2023, Catherine and her son both dial 911 to report a physical altercation between them. Catherine tells authorities she feels fearful of what her son might do to her. Collin Griffith says he is fearful too, not of what might happen to him, but of what he might do.
At this point, you're being placed under arrest for domestic battery.
Griffith is arrested and taken to Polk County Jail, where he stays the night. He's released and taken home the next day. But just hours later, he dials 911 again.
Hey, you got a minute? Okay, so I'm out at Collin Griffith's house. So, long story short, I know that you were called last night, or that you talked to him last night. I get a call from Joella this morning, who gets a call from the jail that he was released. He's got a court date at 1 o'clock. Was fearful, and he said, if you put me in the car, this is what he tells the jail staff, if he puts me in the car, I'm going to kill her. If you send me back to that house, I'll probably kill her. And I know that there's a history, and I know he does this. However, in no point was he evaluated. At no point, and my argument is you can want to call patrol for everything else to evaluate for a Baker rep, but you have a kid saying, don't put me in this car or I'll kill her, and I'm supposed to just okay, pretend you didn't tell me that?
Officer Martinez takes all the precautions she has at her disposal to de-escalate the situation between Griffith and his mother. She doesn't have enough evidence to charge him with a crime, but she ensures the two are separated, at least for the time being.
Because we want what's right for him, but we also want, but we have an obligation to protect you.
I understand.
And protect him. We have to protect both. Because even though he didn't threaten to harm himself, he threatened to harm his mom. And either way, that
I know, he beat the shit out of me last night. I know.
And with all due respect, you can't have them here last night where you were fearful, and then 4 hours later, you're recording, because recording's not helping you when he chokes you out. And what's the recording gonna do? What's the recording? It's not bringing you back. You'll still be dead. You know, I'm not trying to make it sound like it's an easy task, man, because I'm sure it's a tough thing to do, but I struggle with a kid that's being released from jail and saying, if you bring me back there, she's gonna die.
If we don't do something,
shame on us.
Yeah, then we're not.
Shame on us that
then
we didn't do our
failed.
job, and we failed you. And I'm not failing you, nor am I going to fail your son.
10 months later, on September 8, 2024, Collin Griffith places another call to 911. This time, he tells the dispatcher his mother is dead after an explosive argument between them. According to Griffith, he tries to flee, but his mother allegedly chased after him wielding a knife. That's when he alleges she trips and falls onto the blade. The knife fully penetrated Catherine Griffith's neck through to the other side. Griffith goes to trial for his mom's death in early 2025, nearly 2 years to the day after he killed his father in what was ultimately ruled an act of self-defense. But the jury doesn't know this. The prosecution informs the jury that Griffith has killed someone in self-defense, but they don't reveal it was his father. If jurors did have that crucial piece of information, they might have wondered, is Collin Griffith the victim of disturbing and dysregulated family dynamics, like the defense argued? Or could he be a psychopath? I'm Dr. G, a seasoned clinical and forensic psychologist, and I'm going to dive into Collin Griffith's case with some analyses of the key moments captured on body cam and consider what, if anything, Griffith's mannerisms and alleged behavior described by witnesses can tell us about the role psychology plays in our justice system. These analyses are opinions based on professional experience and the case information available for review. My opinions have no bearing on the court's decision or Collin Griffith's innocence. Law and Crime and I are not making any diagnoses or officially recommending treatment for anyone mentioned or any viewers at home. Here we see Collin Griffith standing outside of the home where he was staying in November 2023. Officers arrive on scene after a 911 call reporting an altercation between Griffith and his mother, Catherine. The call comes just hours after Griffith was released from jail following a physical altercation between them the night before.
She thinks that I'm like psychotic, like literally psychopath, sociopath, something like that. I don't know exactly where she's at. She thinks I'm going to kill her, and that I want to kill her, or that I want to be out of her.
Now, the first thing you're probably noticing is how open his body is. When we're feeling defensive, we tend to cross our arms. We tend to find ways to obscure ourselves in some ways because being open is being vulnerable. And if we have things to hide, we typically cover ourselves up. He's not doing that right now. You see him holding on to the edge of his pants, but to me that looks like he's mimicking the officers. I don't think that he has a belt on right now. It certainly doesn't look like it, but he has his thumbs in his shorts like there's a belt there. So I think that in some ways is mirroring what's around him.
She thinks I'm going to kill her, and that I want to kill her, or that I want to be out of her.
Do you?
No, sir.
Now, when they said, do you, when they were talking about, do you want to kill her? Now, one thing you saw was that he shook his head no as he said it. Now, as weird as that sounds, sometimes when people will say something and then react afterward, that's what we associate with more of a performance. So if someone says no, then shakes their head afterward, it's not synchronized. So we think of that as being an intentional shaking of the head. This looks more involuntary. So watch this again.
That I want to be out of her.
Do you?
No, sir.
Okay.
I don't want to hurt anyone, let alone my mom, even despite this happening, but I'm not going to take...
His body posture isn't changing much so far. And what we're seeing is that he's taking up a lot of space. You can see his elbows are out. He does have a lot of confidence in his posture right now, actually.
But I consider abuse when someone's attacking me. And
how is she attacking you? What kind of abuse are we talking?
When she attacked me. When she threw a punch at me, grabbed onto me, I grabbed onto her back. I got her off of me. She hit the ground. And then I fled and called Rentis, and then he sent someone out.
You called who?
So one thing that we're not seeing is we're not seeing much emotion on his face. We're not seeing fear, anger, sadness, disgust. You're really not seeing any specific emotions, which is something that we look at, and we look for changes. We look for what emotions come up when people are in situations like this. We're not really seeing much right now. Let's go back and watch it again, see if we notice anything.
I grabbed onto her back. I got her off of me. She hit the ground. And then I fled and called Rentis, and then he sent someone out.
Now, one thing you may have noticed is that he is glancing at the body cam here and there. And that's important because that does show that he does have an awareness that he's being recorded, that he is going to be, that this is going to be something that will be ultimately be reviewed.
When she attacked me, when she threw a punch at me, grabbed onto me, I grabbed onto her back. I got her off of me.
Now, I talked about how he's being open because his chest is wide open, but it is interesting that he's not talking with his hands more. He's moving his hands around, but he's not allowing himself to be more open in that way. So there is a certain degree of defensiveness here. That doesn't mean that he's lying, but it does mean that he is feeling a certain degree of defensiveness in this situation, which is understandable considering that he's being asked questions by police.
She hit the ground, and then I fled and called Rentis, and then he sent someone out.
You called who?
Rentis, Detective Rentis.
Okay.
Now, one thing you're not seeing much of right now is emotion as he talks about this. He was able to say it very plainly. We're not seeing any fear, any anger. We're not seeing any real emotion. And one thing that we look for when it comes to whether or not somebody's being defensive is we look for changes in behavior. We look for subtle facial expressions, and he's not really showing much right now. So another explanation for that could be that if he did go through what he says he did, there can be trauma associated with that, and sometimes people numb out because this would have all been very soon after that happened. So it is important to notice that we really are not seeing much distinct emotion.
Got her off of me. She hit the ground, and then I fled and called Rentis, and then he sent someone out.
You called who?
Rentis, Detective Rentis.
Okay. So
basically why we came back is when the jail was releasing you to your mom this morning, was there anything said then?
Yeah, I said that I didn't really feel safe there with myself and with her.
Now, you'll notice his eyebrows went up when he said, I didn't really feel safe there with myself or with her. Watch this right here.
Yeah, I said that I didn't really feel safe there with...
I didn't really feel safe there. Now, when we raise our eyebrows, we want people to pay attention to our face. So when he's saying that, he really wants that to be heard. He wants people to hear that's what he said. And it sounds like he's quoting himself fairly accurately. So at this point, that is an important point for him. When you see people raise their eyebrows like that, they really want you to focus on what they're saying.
Morning, was there anything said then?
Yeah, I said that I didn't really feel safe there with myself and with her. And that I didn't know what was going to happen. I still don't know what's going to happen.
As far as what?
Her attacking me or her doing something to herself or me.
Okay, what about you doing something to her? Are you able to control yourself?
I'm in a constant state of fight or flight, and I don't know. If I think she's going to do something, even if she's not, I might act. I'm not going to go crazy or anything, but I'm not sure, honestly.
Okay.
The November 14th conversation between responding officers and Colin continues.
So how long ago was your dad passed? Sorry to hear that, by the way.
7 months.
7 months?
Yeah.
Okay.
He attacked me, my dad, and when he did... Yeah.
Okay.
Now, you saw him step back just now. Now, we do that to disconnect a little bit. So talking about this may be making him feel more uncomfortable than he was before.
He attacked me, my dad, and when he did, he tried to kill me with a knife, and then it was in Oklahoma, and he died. So,
Okay.
yeah. How was that? I shot him when he tried to kill me. Did you already have...
He responds very quickly, which is interesting because he's talking about things with so much heaviness, situations that are so traumatic, but he doesn't sit and think about what he's going to say. He responds very quickly, which, once again, we tend to associate with someone who's not trying to be deceptive, or at least not overtly so, which is very interesting.
You have a gun in your hand? I was fleeing, and the house was filled with guns, 23 to be exact, and
you knew who they were?
I didn't seek one out, I was just trying to run, but then I was cornered, and I had nothing else. There was a gun, and she got that.
I was just trying to kill you.
He's also a bit of a case, but homophobia. Other stuff.
Oh.
You also notice that as he said that homophobia, he was speaking a little bit more quietly. There may be getting more into territory that it makes him uncomfortable to talk about. So he does seem more uncomfortable here, but he's not, once again, not closing himself off, not really facing away. He is interacting with the person that's speaking with him. So we're continuing to see signs that he may be uncomfortable slightly, but overall is answering questions pretty directly. He's not showing a lot of signs that he needs to calm himself down, because that's really what we look for. We oftentimes watch people to see if they're having to calm themselves down, touch their lips, touch their face. It seems that he's holding on to his waistband, but that's pretty much it. That's about the only thing we've seen to try to calm himself as he's talking about this.
I don't know the clinical definition, but basically she thinks that I'm an emotionless, narcissistic, murderous person.
And once again, he was closing his eyes right here as he said this. Watch this right here.
I don't know the clinical definition, but basically she thinks...
And so we really do that for one of two reasons. One, because we don't really want to see the reaction of the person we're talking to, or it's because what we're talking about brings us discomfort. But something about saying, these are all the things that my mom says are wrong with me, something about that seems to be bringing up some emotions in him, and he feels the need to close his eyes.
Thinks that I'm an emotionless, narcissistic, murderous person.
Are you seeing anybody about that situation and try and work through that, or what?
Online therapy, but other than that...
Online therapy?
Yeah.
Okay. How's that working?
It's going, I guess, but probably going to miss this session and the next session because of everything that's going on.
Okay.
So you can see his hands right now. Now his hands do look more uncomfortable. That does seem to be more of a position of trying to soothe himself as he's standing there. That being said, most people in situations with police officers feel uncomfortable, so it's not really surprising that he's doing at least something to try to calm himself down. So, as he said, his mother says he's emotionless. It doesn't seem that he is entirely emotionless. It does seem that there is some attempt to make himself feel calmer, but very little, actually.
But everything's going on.
Okay.
Hey.
How are you, sir?
Okay. So right now, I mean,
Just gonna play some.
That's cool.
Yeah.
right.
This is the second time today.
Now, you'll also notice how straight he's standing, even while getting arrested. Oftentimes, when we feel defensive, we lower our chins to protect our neck because it's a very vulnerable space. And so oftentimes when you see people getting arrested or getting cuffs put on them, they do put their head down. They do start to look shameful. They do start to feel embarrassed. We're not really seeing anything there. So we're still seeing a lot of confidence right here as he's even when he's getting arrested.
Okay.
I'll still make my court appearance, correct?
Should. If not, they'll definitely know, make sure they know where you are.
In late January 2025, Collin Griffith stands trial for the stabbing death of his mother, Catherine Griffith, who friends and family call Kathy. At the start of the trial, Griffith can be seen sitting between his attorneys Amy Thornhill and Howard Dimmick.
Officer Hyde, may you please introduce yourself to the jury and spell your name for the record?
My name is Christopher Hyde, spelled CHRISTOPHERHYDE.
And where are you employed?
I'm employed as a police officer with the Iowa Tribe Police Department.
And what state is that in?
That is in Oklahoma.
And how long have you been employed in law enforcement?
Approximately 8 years now.
Now I want to direct your attention specifically to February 14th of 2023. Were you working for the Lincoln County Sheriff's Office as a deputy on that date?
I was.
And did you respond to a homicide scene within your jurisdiction?
Yes.
Were you one of the first responders?
I was.
Were you able to determine through your investigation that the deceased individual had been shot 2 times?
That is correct.
Were you able to determine that 1 gunshot wound was to the chest and 1 gunshot wound was to the head?
Yes.
Through your investigation, were you able to determine that the defendant here in court is the individual who shot the deceased?
Yes.
Now, the person that you saw that day, do you see them in court today?
I do.
If you recognize them by something they're wearing, could you state that for the record and perhaps point to the individual?
The defendant is seated at the defense table in a gray suit jacket.
Your Honor, the record will reflect Officer Hyde has identified the defendant. And is it a fair statement that the defendant was not charged for that killing in Oklahoma by the prosecutor's office?
That is correct.
And was the defendant arrested for that?
He was.
All right, Officer Hyde, I have no further questions.
Without revealing the identity of the deceased person as Charles Griffith, Collin Griffith's dad, the witness called by the prosecution only identifies Collin Griffith as the shooter. Griffith can be seen at the defense table alongside his attorneys after being pointed out to the jury. Griffith requests to remain outside of the courtroom while the jury listens to the 911 call he made the day his mom, Kathy, died from a stab wound to the neck.
So, Mr. Griffith, you're still under oath. We had previously been talking about your decision to absent yourself from the courtroom during publication of that exhibit. You asked for some additional time with Ms. Thornhill and Mr. Hendry. Have you had enough additional time?
I have not.
And have you discussed the pros and cons of being in here or waiving your appearance?
Yes, we have, Your Honor.
Have they answered all your questions and addressed any concerns you have about that particular issue?
Yes, Your Honor, they did.
Detective Lacey Venoniani from the Florida Department of Children and Families takes the stand on trial day 2. Venoniani offers insight into Catherine's past, her relationship with her son, and Collin Griffith's alleged disrespect towards his mom.
In your opinion, as somebody who provides intervention for families either in turmoil or distress, or if there's been an arrest, do you think it was a good idea for Collin and Kathy to live together?
We did everything we could as far as intervention purposes, working alongside of our mental health unit and with DCF, and that was the decision that was made.
Who made it?
DCF returned him back to his home. We had resources we could implement in the time being to help guide them. I can't speak on who made it specifically.
But your personal opinion?
I'm confident that we did everything we could. I don't know that I feel comfortable giving my personal
If it had been
opinion.
your decision, you would not have allowed them to live together, correct?
Correct.
For both of their safety?
Yes.
Including Colin's safety from what Kathy might do to him?
Both.
Yes. You became aware of some prior involvement that Kathy had with DCF, right?
Yes.
And it's fair to say that in most, if not all, of those prior DCF involvements, it involved Kathy being violent or aggressive towards other family members.
Yes.
And many of her actions that caused DCF to become involved were committed in front of her children.
Most of them that I recall, yes.
And in fact, her kids were taken away from her, were sheltered from her at times, correct?
I don't recall those specifics, but...
Would it surprise you?
No.
And you're also aware that Kathy had been arrested before?
Yes.
Specifically for an incident that involved her stabbing her then husband in front of 10-year-old Colin.
Yes.
And also, there were other incidences where Kathy committed violence upon her then husband in front of the children.
Yes.
Okay. So you're aware of the car pinning incident, which I call
Yes.
it, where she drives her car and pins her then husband to the house with her car still running. He can't escape, right?
Yes.
And her older son had to go and yell and beat on the car and tried to get a baseball bat to break through the windows to finally get his mom to release her then husband from...
I don't recall those very specifics, but I do recall minor details of the report, yes.
It's also fair to say that she really, really, really wanted Colin to stay with her.
Yes.
She knew that Colin did not want to live with her, correct?
Yes.
She knew that he had said he didn't feel safe with her, right?
Yes.
And she still wanted him there at all costs.
Yes.
Even despite the things that you all told her he said.
Yes.
Next, the prosecution questions Detective Venoniani.
The defense described her as unpredictable. Is that correct?
Yes.
But what was predictable was her love for her son and her wanting her son to be with her, correct?
Yes.
And she was cognizant of the fact that probably as soon as he turned 18, he was going to say, see you later, and basically
Yes.
ignore her?
Yes.
It was mentioned that she was manipulative. Is that correct?
Yes.
Was the defendant manipulative?
Yes.
Who did the defendant show respect to?
His grandma.
Okay. And what set of people?
Of higher authority, people who had a lot of money.
Would he respect people that would do things for him or who could do things for him?
Yes.
Like buy him things and do things like that?
Yes.
And you said he loved his grandma?
Yes.
Do you know why he threatened to kill his grandma and threatened to do her harm in addition to loving her?
No.
Did you see many instances of when things were going according to the way he wanted them to go, he'd be happy and fine with it?
Yes.
Did you see many instances of when somebody tried to discipline him or take something away or tell him no, he would get furious?
Yes.
And be immature and lash out?
Yes.
Is it a fair statement that he sure loved going on cruises with his mom?
Yes.
He sure loved going to Washington, D.C. and Philadelphia and the Caribbean and all these different places with his mom?
Yes.
He enjoyed vacations. He enjoyed the food, going out to eat. Is that correct?
Yes, they took a lot of vacations together.
He enjoyed basically unlimited Starbucks drinks, coffees, cold drinks, sandwiches that his mom would buy him?
Yes.
He loved the fact that his mom bought him computers, correct?
Yes.
He loved that she got him an Xbox.
Yes.
He loved that she got him a cell phone.
Yes.
He loved the video games and all that stuff, correct?
Yes.
But he didn't like chores, right?
Correct.
And he didn't like weed eating the backyard or taking out the trash or keeping his room clean, correct?
Correct.
So God forbid he had to do any of those things. That would anger him, correct?
Yes.
So he would prefer to not have anyone telling him what to do. Is that correct?
Yes.
Sometimes our grandparents a little less disciplinarians than the actual parent of a child.
Yes.
And despite knowing that she might be signing her own death certificate, she still wanted to spend every moment with her son until they killed her.
Yes.
All right, nothing further.
On trial day 3, Robert Willantis, Catherine Griffith's father, takes the stand.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. My name is Robert Willantis. Robert, R-O-B-E-R-T, Willantis, W-A-L-A-N-T-A-S.
Tell briefly to the jury about your relationship with your grandson. Did you have a relationship with the defendant?
We would talk on the phone, but I'm not a helicopter parent. I was there to support him and to support Kathy and to love them and be there for them.
Based upon your personal observations, did it appear that the defendant trusted you and would talk to you and confide in you about certain things, grandfather, grandson topics?
Yes.
Did there come a time when the defendant said something to you that was very disturbing to you?
Yes.
Tell the jury about what the defendant said to you.
My grandson was very aggravated at his grandmother and his mother. He said, "I am so tired of these two. I'm disgusted." He said, "My mom, I keep thinking over and over, I want to slit her throat. I want her to bleed out. I want to smell the blood. I want to feel the blood. I want to feel the life and the blood leaving her body."
Now, when he said that, what went through your mind?
I needed to take a deep breath and do what I could to discourage that thought, because thoughts become words, words become actions.
What did you say to him in response?
I said, "Colin, I love you, buddy, but you can't have those kinds of thoughts and focus on them and then speak them, because you will cause them to become reality. Please think positive things about your mom, about yourself, and about a good future together."
Now, at any point did you warn your daughter about what the defendant was wanting to do to her?
I did, but I did not use the exact words because there was so much malice.
Objection, Judge.
Now, explain to the jury, were you concerned that if you used the exact words the defendant said that he wanted to do to his mom, that might negatively affect their mother-son relationship?
It would, and I was afraid it would actually give her nightmares.
Did you tell her a clean version or a more vanilla version, if you will?
Yes, I did.
What was her response?
That he's been threatening her, and he's been threatening Susan multiple times with killing both of them.
On trial day 4, Collin Griffith's grandmother, Susan Detman, testifies. Detman is Catherine Griffith's mother, who allegedly had and still maintains a close relationship with Collin Griffith. Detman has been mentioned in several testimonies throughout the trial. Now, it's her turn to speak.
Okay, let's talk a little bit more about Kathy. Now, it sounded like she had some mental problems. Is that correct?
Yes.
Now, you would probably agree that it didn't help that she got impregnated when she was just a child, correct?
She was 13. She got impregnated when she ran away from the Hope House, and they found her in the hotel with her boyfriend. It didn't help that her father called her and that she was damaged goods, and he didn't want anything to do with her.
Ma'am, it sounds like you're really quick to try to throw dirt on your dead daughter. Would you agree with that?
No, not at all. My dead daughter did the best that she could. We have a problem in this country with addressing mental health. We all know that. And that's what she had. She had mental health issues. At times, she was the greatest person on the world. Very intelligent.
I appreciate that, ma'am. I appreciate that.
During the testimony, Detman appears to be reading from notes. Even still, she seems to struggle in answering the prosecution's exact questions.
So, we were talking about your daughter, that she was a very committed teacher and very committed to the youth of her classroom. And I mentioned that at a certain point, she even allowed one of her students to move into the household, and it was believed that Chuck had an inappropriate relationship with this student. Are you aware of that? With a yes or no answer, if we can start at that place, I'd appreciate it. Are you aware of that?
Yes.
And you were not a big fan of Chuck as it ended up being the divorce, correct? For how he treated her, from how he impregnated her as a child through the years, being physically, emotionally, and mentally abusive to your daughter. I can't imagine you were a fan of that, were you?
The man the prosecution refers to as Chuck is Charles Griffith, Catherine's ex-husband and Collin Griffith's father. The jury knows that Collin Griffith lived with his father in Oklahoma before moving to Florida to live with his mom in 2023. But remember, they do not know that Collin Griffith shot and killed Chuck in self-defense.
No, Robert was the one that was a fan of Chuck.
Now, ma'am, I understand that you hate your ex-husband.
I don't hate him.
Well, it sounds like you're throwing stuff about Robert in a lot.
You just asked me if I was a fan, and I wanted to tell you who in the family was. I knew Chuck from the time he was...
Ms. Detman,
oh, I'm sorry.
That's the point. Oh. He gets to ask the questions to elicit the information he's looking for. If additional information is needed, Ms. Thornhill or Mr. Hendry will make sure to address it. So just pay close attention to the question that's asked and try to answer just the question that's asked.
I apologize.
That's all right. Mr. Levine.
Appreciate it.
Detman mentioned in her testimony that she believes the U.S. has a problem with addressing mental health. She details concerns over her daughter's mental health on multiple occasions, but doesn't offer concerns over her grandson's mental wellness, and the prosecution takes note.
Now, you described it as a fight in Port Charlotte where law enforcement came because you said your daughter was beating Colin with a belt that made him do sit-ups and push-ups. You remember that?
I did push-ups. I took away the sit-ups. It was push-ups and putting the weights above his head and running in place.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that. Now, you remember talking to law enforcement when they came out there, correct?
Yes.
And giving a sworn statement because you just wanted both parties, your grandson and your daughter, you wanted everybody to be safe and healthy and happy, correct?
Yes.
Now, Ms. Detman, as to the root of what the issue was that night, do you remember telling the deputy that the three of you were at the dining room table and Susan had Colin seated down and Kathy told Colin that she would be implementing new parenting rules, and Colin would be having his Xbox, his cell phone, and other items taken away as disciplinary action due to him being disrespectful to her. Do you recall telling law enforcement that?
I remember telling law enforcement about the Xbox would be, I don't know if it was taken away, but it was going to be restricted.
And at that time, your grandson didn't want to hear from his mom, and so he stood up and threatened to fight her and said, let's just do it, correct?
That was after the incident with the exercising and belt, the beating of the belt. That's when Kathy wanted us to all sit down and eat sandwiches. Like it literally went from one extreme to another. Sit down and eat sandwiches. And then Colin got up from the table and said, let's just do it. And I went to go get my phone to contact Officer Rentis or Corporal Rentis or Officer Lacey.
Okay, all right, very good. Now, you mentioned that you and your family members love to talk about how violent Kathy was. Is that right?
No, we didn't love to talk about how violent Kathy was. We talked about what we could do to help her. We didn't want her to lose her job. We didn't want her to be suicidal. And more than anything, we wanted her to try to get better.
Did you talk about how violent your grandson was?
No.
And why not? Weren't you concerned about that?
Objections.
Detman might not have been concerned about her grandson's alleged tendency towards violence, but law enforcement and DCF agents were worried about what he might do if prompted to act, especially because of previous statements he made to police. And they were right to take Colin's claim seriously, because on September 7th and 8th, 2024, Colin's problematic relationship with his mom finally came to a head.
All right, now let's move on to the subject matter of kitchen knives or butcher knives. Do you tell the jury about the time when you noticed that there was a knife missing from your residence there in Auburndale, and you were trying to figure out who stole the knife or who took the knife?
Yes, there was a small knife with a blade like this that I bought in the dollar store, which is now like the $1.29 store, and it had a protective cover on it, and it wasn't in the drawer with the rest of the knives and silverware.
And did you find out eventually that your grandson had taken the knife?
Yes.
And he basically told you he just needed it just in case, and did not elaborate on what he was going to do with it?
He said he just needed it.
Now, at that time also, Kathy made it explicitly clear to you that she was afraid that the defendant might hurt her, correct?
Not at that time, it was later.
And there was multiple times when Kathy let you know that she was afraid for your safety and for her own safety.
Yes.
Now, your response when this was going on, when law enforcement made contact with you, was that you didn't know that Colin was a psychopathic killer, correct?
I never said that. Never.
If I may approach, please, Your Honor. Ma'am, if you could just take your time and read the highlighted portion to yourself.
For one thing, I don't use words like stupid, Colin. I would never say that.
Oh, man. He just wants you to read it to yourself.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
The prosecution hands Detman her own official statement to law enforcement from the day her daughter died. She immediately denies at least some of what law enforcement claimed she said, loudly enough for the jury to hear. If what the prosecution claims is true, that Detman referred to Collin Griffith as a psychopathic killer after Kathy's death, those words could possibly contradict her courtroom testimony. According to Collin Griffith's statement to police in November 2023, even his own mother called him a psychopath, but Detman now claims under oath that she wouldn't call her grandson names like stupid and that she never said he was a psychopath. Colin's grandmother, like his defense attorneys, appear to believe Colin wasn't psychopathic, but a victim in his relationship with his mom. And on September 8, 2024, once again, he was forced to protect himself against one of his parents. On the fifth day of the trial, the prosecution and the defense rest their cases. The jury comes to a decision only 11 hours after deliberation.
We, the jury, find as follows. As to the defendant in this case, the defendant, as to count one, the defendant is not guilty. As to count two, the defendant is not guilty. So say we, this 5th day of February, 2025.
Does the state wish to have the jury polled?
No, Your Honor.
You may be seated.
Shockingly, 17-year-old Collin Griffith is found not guilty of the murder of his mother, Catherine Griffith. This case was both incredibly strange and extraordinary. What we observed as far as body language was that Collin Griffith is someone who remains immensely calm under incredible pressure. During the body cam footage with police, he showed little emotion and seemed very open. In court, he also remained remarkably calm. Additionally, there were some standout moments during the trial. When Robert Willantis, Colin's grandfather and Catherine's father, said that Colin had told him that he wanted to slit his mother's throat and to smell her blood, there was a very vivid and disgusting way that he described what Colin had allegedly said to him. On the other hand, Colin's grandmother, Susan Detman, portrayed Colin as a victim of his mother and denied that she ever said that he was psychopathic. While people may interpret his calm demeanor different ways, I think it ultimately helped him get acquitted and remain the free man that he is today. No one can say for certain if the jury's decision might have been different if they knew the circumstances of Charles Griffith's death in 2023. But in the end, speculation about Collin Griffith and the trial testimony is just that, speculation. Griffith was acquitted of any crime related to either of his parents' death and walks free today. He's now 18 years old and is trying to move on with his life.